So today there was a big meeting. Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff meeting for about 3 hours, we are told, today, and the Kremlin saying that that meeting was constructive and useful. This is what the Kremlin said, saying that it lasted around 3 hours, and this follows the frustration of U.S. President Donald Trump to a point where this frustration led him to threaten Russia with sanctions if it does not soon agree to a peace deal with Ukraine. So the Kremlin says Putin conveyed some signals to the United States on the Ukrainian issue. Corresponding signals were also received from President Trump. The Kremlin also saying that they will release more information on what was discussed after Witkoff reports back to Trump. Brooks Spector is international relations expert joining us on the line. Brooks, how are you?
I am okay, although I'm a little cold all of a sudden here.
Yeah, no, it is cold. It is
cold.
It
got cold all at once. I like the way that phrase "constructive and useful" is rolled out.
Yeah,
that's sort of a synonym for they didn't throw ashtrays at each other and nobody got physically hurt.
I see. But in essence, what does it mean?
It means that both sides stated their positions. There was no agreement. There was no handshake deal. There was no, okay, we're agreed on the following, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. But we heard you clearly. And that sort of leaves the door open for either further discussion or an agreement that there is no agreement. I mean, we get to see both of those possibilities.
Yeah.
Now, what is interesting, of course, is that if you go back to the Trump administration version 1.0, there was practically a love fest between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to the point where, for many American commentators and Europeans, it was almost embarrassing to watch the way Donald Trump was treating Vladimir Putin as if he were, he was the person we had to love most. And then you roll forward to the campaign for president for this most recent election, with Donald Trump saying, if I'm in charge, I can end the war between Ukraine and Russia in one day with one phone call. And that obviously has not come to pass because the war rumbles on. The Russians continue attacking Ukrainian cities, hospitals, kindergartens, maternity hospitals, apartment buildings. And in fact, in the last couple of days, there were more attacks on the capital, Kiev, than there had been since the beginning of hostilities. And Donald Trump has apparently now to the conclusion, we think, that Vladimir Putin is not serious about wanting to negotiate an end, and the only way it's going to happen is if he begins to feel that his country is facing economic consequences and hardships that are regime threatening in a sense.
Does this work for Zelensky? Because he seems to be happy with the fact that the U.S. is beginning to see his side of the argument with regards to Russia's seriousness to a ceasefire. Also, the support that the U.S. is beginning to show, because this morning the U.S. State Department, I read from somewhere, signed off on a $200 million deal, which will allow its partners in Europe and elsewhere to purchase military supplies on its behalf.
You compare that to the meeting that Zelensky had with Trump in the White House that was publicized, or was available publicly on the airwaves, in which they basically insisted that Volodymyr Zelensky simply wasn't serious about sorting things out. He wasn't a friend, and that the only way forward would be apparently for him to agree to whatever terms were finally offered from the Russians. And with the arms agreement, with this sort of complicated idea that European nations would buy things like Patriot missiles and then give them to the Ukrainian forces, it seems that, at least as we see now, that the Ukrainian position has the upper hand in Washington and presumably in Donald Trump's mind as well. The challenge, though, is if on Friday no resolution has been achieved, and if it is the deadline that Donald Trump insists that it is, the idea of indirect sanctions, because there are already a range of sanctions on Russian government and economy and in some cases individuals even, there already are sanctions in place. And the idea now is tougher sanctions of some type and what they're calling indirect sanctions. That would be, remember, the major exports from Russia are what? Are petroleum, oil, and natural gas. And indirect sanctions would mean if you, country X, continue to buy oil or natural gas from Russia, you will have sanctions placed on you for the point because of your purchase of material from Russia.
Yeah,
that's going to cause a certain amount of ructions with two major consumers of Russian petroleum and natural gas, namely China and India. So I don't quite see how it's going to play out.
Yeah. Is the Israeli situation also being taken advantage of here by Putin? Because there's something that was posted, I'm not too sure if it is authentic or not, which purportedly is quoted from comments made by, or an observation made by Vladimir Putin, which says if Russia had done just 10% of what Israel did in Gaza, NATO would now be at Moscow's gates. The West has taught us that human rights begin and end at the borders of Israeli interests.
Well, I haven't seen that comment, so I don't know, its context or its veracity. But things like that have been said by various Russian figures over the last number of months. It's true. But the pictures, the video, the things that I have heard from individuals from Ukraine paint a really stark picture, not necessarily of the whole country, because it's a huge country, but in places where the warfare has taken place, there are whole towns and villages and cities that have been utterly destroyed in Ukraine as well. The capital has not largely been destroyed, no, but some of the cities closer to the areas the Russians have been able to conquer, certainly they look about the same as the pictures you see from the Middle East. I mean, it's just, acre after acre of building that doesn't really resemble building anymore.
Got you. Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much, Brooks. Be warm.
Okay, you take care, and we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Brooks Spector there, international relations expert.